All right, guys. So we got Fuel Fabrication LLC high clearance trailing arms. We're getting ready to put them on a 21 Pro XP. We've been running these for the last 11 months, and they've finally come to reality where you guys can purchase them now. We've been testing them, improving them, racing, and we've had very good luck. We've made very few changes throughout the last year, or 11 months or so, with the arms, but we're going to go ahead and do an install and basically show you how to take your old stock ones off and how to put the new ones on. So these will come with the hardware needed, shocks, sway bar link, upper sway bar link bolts. Your brake line bolts are all Allen, they're all threaded. Here, let's see, your front frame mount. If you purchase the front or the lower frame, lower trailing arm frame stiffener, this is something that is going to be like a DIY weld it yourself. You'll basically bolt it up and you'll clean the frame and weld it on. We're going to show you that today. But basically these protect your lower trailing arm mounts, because after you put these arms on, the only thing that is going to hit a rock or any obstacle is going to be your frame mount. And we found that out real quick. You can look at the bottom of our arms and you would see that they are still nice and pretty. Basically, this is going to protect your frame, because if you break that mount, you probably technically need a new frame by then, or have to have somebody that can fabricate you a new one. But this will protect it. It is going to work as a skid plate basically, and it will bolt on, and then you'll weld it on, and it'll be permanent. These are not the permanent sway bar links that are going to come with it. Those are still at the machine shop. But yeah, all the supplied hardware is going to be there, and we're going to get to this install. Is there anything you wanted to talk about these arms?
Yeah, I mean, they started out as really like Tim coming up with what he thought was a good design. So Tim's installed probably 100 trailing arms.
Well,
he's witnessed a bunch of.
We've installed a lot, but me and Mike from Fuel Fab has done a lot of work behind the scenes. But he's connected the dots and made the high angle. I just gave him my input and tell him what I think should be on the market, and what compared to what is out there to what we have now. I want to say we have the highest clearance arms on the market. Normally Pro XPs only get about maybe 1.5 inches, I think, of your highest clearance, and there's a way we were able to keep OEM geometry and still get you probably, I think, 3 inches is what it comes out to be of clearance, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, these are mega high clearance. They're very strong.
They are CNC cut, CNC laser cut, CNC bent on a press brake, and they are MIG and TIG welded in multiple different locations. That front mounting point is I want to say it's like 6 inches, 6-inch billet. This is what our OEM. This takes an OEM Polaris bushing. So if you know anything about the Pro XPs, the Pro XP radius rod and trailing arm bushings don't really have a problem. They don't go bad. So why change it? So we just created this billet end link. It's probably back maybe this far, tying everything together. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I mean it's welded to it. There's a one-piece spine that runs the entire length. It's got little points that weld to it and connect the shells,
like a little T-bracket. So basically you got your billet end link, and then you got a T-plate. And what I'm going to call a T-plate is it's just a square piece that gets sandwiched between the spine. So here's your spine. Then you got your T-plate that goes through it. This butts up against the T-plate, and then the spine goes over the top of this billet end link. I don't know, 4 inches at least. And then you got your 2 side plates that sandwich it, and then the spine comes all the way back, goes through this offset and through this gusset we have back here. You can kind of see this gusset right here. So, and you can see this weld right here. That is the spine coming all the way through and protruding into this plate and tying it all together. You can still run your wheel scrapers that comes on your factory trailing arms if you want. I don't run them. I don't know a lot of people that do, but yeah, that's what we got, and it's super legit, and they are super strong, and we have tested the crap out of them, and they are ready for the market. And let us get started with show you guys how to remove this old trailing arm, and we'll get you dialed in with this new one.
So you're going to need an 18 socket, you're going to need an 18 millimeter wrench, you need a 15 millimeter socket, 15 millimeter wrench, you need a 13 socket and 13 wrench for the scraper. You need a 30 to get your axle nut off. You're going to want to use side cutters to get the cotter pin out. And torque wrench would be for assembling. Red and or blue Loctite for reassembling. Drill is going to be to get the rivets out of the brake lines. And a 1/2 inch and 3/8 impact helps. So we're going to get started. On the OEM radius rods, you want to take the lower out in order to get to the caliper bolts. So we're going to start with that. OEM is 18 millimeter for the radius rod. Grab 15. Take the brake caliper off. Gently let that hang. We're going to do the axle nut now while we still have this upper radius rod on. Grab your side cutters. Well, I cut the bottoms of these off. Pro tip, I usually use eye protection. I'm just going to use my squinters. I don't want those to come out and get you in the eyeball. Pull your cotter pin out. Do not reuse that. You're going to want a big 1/2 inch impact. If you don't have a big 1/2 inch impact, have a friend go ahead and hold the brake down while you're getting this off. We got a 1/2 inch impact. Now we're going to go ahead and remove that upper radius rod. That's also going to be an 18. These are torqued on about 74, so the big impact helps. Pro tip, if you're working on your friend's car and he's got Hess knuckles, go ahead and bring your stock ones, put them on, and steal his knuckles. My soft hands. Now is also a good time to make sure your axle comes out rather than on the trail. We're not going to do that today, but if you're there. So, to get the knuckle off of the factory trailing arm, it's just a 15 front and back, all four here. We're not going to drop this nice Hess knuckle. Right, so each of these bolts that we're holding the knuckles on, the back side, why, I'm not sure, but Clearence puts a washer on the back even though the nuts are flanged, and there's no washer on the front. So a couple of them went flying around. I'm going to take a second and go pick them up so I have them all when I put it back together. Alright, so I gathered up the washers that were holding the knuckle onto the, I had one of them got them underneath there. So I'm going to move on now to the lower shock bolt, and that's going to be 18 and 18. And before I pull this bolt, I'm going to go ahead and take the sway bar out. I don't think it's going to matter if it's hanging on the sway bar, but I'd rather it hang on the shock than on the sway bar. Lower sway bar bolt is 15 socket, 15 wrench. We're going to go ahead and take the upper off too. So the Fuel Fab A-arms, the higher clearance, in order to get that clearance but maintain the integrity of the arm, it actually requires about a 2-inch shorter sway bar link. So it's going to come with sway bar links. We can go ahead and take this link off. All right, we go ahead and remove that lower shock bolt. And then we're going to set the trailing arm on the ground. Hold on to this bolt. I'm going to take a bungee cord and just secure this shock up out of the way. All right, now we have the trailing arm on the ground. Go ahead and grab some safety glasses, 13/64 drill bit, and we're just going to drill the rivets out that are holding the OEM brake line brackets on there. Last step is unbolting the trailing arm from the frame, and that's an 18, and that's going to be better to do with the 1/2-inch impact. This all I'm doing is just kind of putting some pressure on it, kind of moving around to get this easier to slide out. Alright, so actually the last step is going to be removing the OEM rim scraper if you're going to go ahead and reuse that. The Fuel Fab trailing arms do have the holes drilled, so if you want to put these back on. I don't use these, but I know some people do. It's a 13, and there's not quite enough room to get a typical 3/8 in there, so it's going to go old school. Alright, and then this is ready to go to scrap, or you can cut up and use it as like welding practice. Alright, now we got the OEM trailing arm off the car. This particular car is going to get the trailing arm frame brace that Tim had described earlier. So now is going to be the time when this is off. We have access to this to clean it up and weld it. We'll go ahead and install the brace prior to installing the new trailing arm. Alright, we're going to go ahead and remove these two T40 bolts to get this center panel out of the way. And we're also going to take this last rivet for the brake line out to get the brake line away from the heat of the welder. So you just need a T40 and your drill. So there's one more bolt. It holds this plastic splash guard into the frame here. So if you're trying to figure out, you access it from the top. So it's, if you look at the inside side of the factory trailing arm mount, and then follow in this direction, it's right up here. It just bolts down into the frame here. So we're using a 10mm ratcheting wrench to get that out, and it's gonna let us get this splash guard out of the way so it gets away from the heat of the weld. Now that we got everything unbolted, ready to weld, we're gonna go ahead and bring Mike in here, and he's gonna show us basically how he lines that up, gets everything cleaned up and ready to go. Mike?
Yeah, so basically what you're doing here, you've got this bolt down here in the basically the center of the part. That actually lines up where your factory splash shield goes. 9 times out of 10 you'll have your bolt broken off in there. It's pretty helpful. You could also use your trailing arm bolt to line everything up. It'll be a little difficult in the beginning. We wanted a tight fit on the parts, so you got to notch a little bit out of here for the factory welds, because all the factory welds aren't the same size, shape, blah blah blah. So what you got to do is, if you smack it with a hammer, you can see where it's going to indent on the part, or you can use a marker if you can't really tell with a hammer. Notch it out with probably a belt file or whatever you have on hand, whatever your favorite tool is, and then yeah, you go ahead, fit it back up, and weld away. So here's a good example of where the factory weld is different on some chassis. You gotta get right up in here. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but right where my finger is, there's a restart on that weld right there. That's like the ideal place where you'd have to notch it. So earlier we were talking about how you can smack this part with a hammer or whatever, and it would make an indent. And right about there is where it is from the factory weld. Okay, so we got this thing all fit up in the car now. I just wanted to point out a couple key things that are really fine details that really help this thing fit well. So this is what I ground out on the inside, made everything fit the factory welds. From here on out, you could take your hand, just kind of pop it up there. And then for the rest of this cleaning, getting the rest of this paint out of the way, you can kind of take a marker and mark a line all the way around, and then take the part back off, finish up your cleaning, and then she'll be ready to weld. Alright guys, so now that we got everything fit up, I'd like to reiterate the fact that if your bolt is broken off from your skid pan inside the frame, there's other ways around it. You could just use your supply trailing arm bolt and the clamp. So what you're going to do is take your bolt, slide it through. This ensures that your alignment's good on your new gusset here. Then just take your clamp, slap that on there. And then from here, I'd go ahead and tack here, tack the ends here, throw one tack in the back right here, pop your bolt out, and you're good to go.
the trailing arm mount frame gusset installed on there. You can see with it installed, it's exactly what it's gonna do. Like it provides protection on that area of the frame, as that's gonna be that new low spot with the high clearance. So the next step is gonna be go ahead and install the high clearance trailing arm. All right, now we're ready to start installing the trailing arm. Using the included hardware, it's a 16 on the bolt, it's an 18 on the nut. Now, this comes with new hardware, it's got a new nylock nut, so you should be okay. I always use red Loctite, especially if you're ever reusing hardware. You shouldn't in this kit, but I'm going to put a dab of red Loctite on just in case on any kind of suspension stuff. So, let's get to it. Orange Loctite's another good option for this. It doesn't require, it's the same strength, doesn't require heat to take it off. These are 74 foot-pounds here, so we're going to get it started with the 1/2 inch and then finish it off with the torque wrench. Alright, so we're just going to get it started with the 1/2 inch. Like I said, it's 74 foot-pounds. It'd be really easy to go over that with it. Get it snug. Right there. Alright, next we're going to put our brake line, install our brake line on the trailing arm. We go ahead and remove the old clamps. Alright, your trailing arms are going to come with new brake line clamps and new brake line hardware. So once we remove the factory clamps, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the included clamps and then go ahead and thread them in to the trailing arm. Use some pliers to help bend these back down. Already we got our brake line mounted up there. We're gonna go ahead and install the shock now. You want to make sure your brake line is to the inside of this ridge on the trailing arm when you install that shock there. For shock bolts, again, these are new nylock nuts. They don't need it. I like to use blue Loctite on the shock bolts. Alright, just like the mounting bolt, it's a 16 bolt, 18 on the nut. And this is also 74 foot-pounds. Alright, next we're going to install our sway bar link. Alright, so in the kit, you're going to get sway bar links. Because remember, your OEM ones will not work, and they're going to be about 2 inches shorter. These are 15 nut, 15 bolt. They were torqued to 44 foot-pounds. Alright, next we're going to install our bearing knuckle. Alright, so reinstall the knuckle or the bearing carrier. We're reusing our hardware, our nylock nuts, and even though we're using Loctite anyway, I like blue Loctite on these. And then remember, just get a couple started. And then remember the washer goes on the nut side for these. So just get this guy started to hold it. The bolts for the carrier are 44 foot-pounds. I don't know if it matters. I like to torque them on kind of evenly, especially with a big expensive Hess knuckle. Next, we're going to install our upper radius rod. That's going to get torqued to 74 foot-pounds. On radius rods, I use red Loctite. Alright, now we can get our hub slid in. Go ahead and reinstall your washer. Make sure the curve of the Belleville washer is facing out, or the curve is facing towards the hub. Get that snugged up right now to torque later. So the torque spec on this is 180. I like to start at about 140 and then start looking for the line for the cotter pin. Anywhere between 140 and 180. If you go straight to 180, I don't like backing off. Alright, next is the brake caliper. You may have noticed we did the upper radius rod and we did not do the lower radius rod. So with factory radius rods on a Pro XP, you can't get the lower caliper bolt in and out with the lower radius rod attached, which is why we did upper to hold it in place, mount the caliper, and then the lower radius rod will be last. Your caliper bolts are going to be blue Loctite, 33 foot-pounds. Now we can install the lower radius rod. Sometimes you gotta be patient with that one. These are 18s, again 18 nut, 18 bolt, red Loctite, 74 foot-pounds. So torque specs, Loctite colors are really important here. Make sure after you have your castle nut torqued, you can use a new cotter pin, and you'll be good to go.
What you guys got
Hey,
going on?
Tim. Thanks for joining us. We got the trailing arm installed.
Nice, looks good.
Yeah. One more thing. On the Walker Evans models, you're going to have to flip your shock guard mount upside down. On the Fox models, you're going to have to go ahead and do without. I've been running the whole season without them, haven't had any issues, but we're working on something for that, but just so you know ahead
In the
of time.
meantime, we're not running it, but the Walker Evans cars, you'll just flip it upside down, and it works just the same. We'll have something figured out for the Fox cars shortly, but as of right now, this is what we got. This is what we've been running. It works great. We will have radius rods and pull plates very shortly. So be paying attention to the fuelfabshop.com website, and you'll get all the stuff that's up to date. And yeah, got a lot more cool parts coming.